Welcome, family, to another edition of Stranger Thinking Media, where we bring you the gospel of Yahushua HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ, to address the problems of a modern world. So, stay tuned. We have an awesome show for you today.
Thank you, Rachel, for that introduction. As we get into this again today, the Matrix has you, Neo. Yes. And today's topic, let's red pill the church. Oh my goodness. Come on, people. Bear with me. Topics covered: the mysterious word church, going in circles, the King James conspiracy, Matthew chapter 16 and verse 18. And I say also unto thee that thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. The mysterious word church. Maybe you didn't think it was mysterious, but, you swallow it down and you don't think about the ingredients. But where does this word come from? What does it mean? You might be surprised. So let's get into it. The mysterious word church. Translation is the replacing of Greek words with English words of similar meaning or intent. Our interest is in the English word for church, which replaces the Greek word ecclesia. In Acts chapter 19, verse 25 through 41, we have an example of the real meaning of ecclesia. The people of Ephesus gathered to deal with Paul's alleged preaching against their god, Artemis of the Ephesians. And I'm assuming most of you remember that or know about that. Anyway, to continue. So then, some were shouting one thing and some another, for the assembly was in confusion, and the majority did not know for what reason they had come together. But if you want anything beyond this, it shall be settled in the lawful assembly. After saying this, he dismissed the assembly. Acts chapter 19, verse 32, 39, and 41. So we're leaning towards the word ecclesia, meaning some kind of an assembly. And it's not just necessarily a religious assembly. It could be, just a town hall meeting would be considered an ecclesia. So let's dig in a little further. In each of these cases, ecclesia is correctly translated as assembly, since it means citizens called to be a governing assembly. In Acts chapter 7 and verse 38 and Hebrews chapter 2 and verse 12, ecclesia is translated as congregation. Also a good interpretation. The rest of the 114 times that ecclesia is used in the New Testament, it has been replaced with church when it gets translated into English, or churches. Replaced because the word church is neither a translation nor a transliteration. So it's really problematic, and we just take it for granted, but it's very problematic. So it's neither a translation nor transliteration of the original word. And we're going to see in a minute. Just remember, ecclesia is a gathering, an assembly, a congregation of people, right? So what does this word church mean? Where does it come from? So it's neither translation nor transliteration of the original word. Someone chose to use church rather than the real meaning of the Greek word or its letters. Never mind the Hebrew, right? The Greek is translated from the Hebrew. And then you don't even bother translating it into English. You just make something up. And in this case, they made up this word church, or used this word church. Here begins the mystery. The mystery of, I don't know if I want to go as far as saying the mystery of iniquity, but you'll get the picture soon enough. if you stick with me. Now, if you're going to get all hurt about it, well, I mean, there's nothing I could do about that. You can continue believing whatever it is you believe, or you can use that faculty that the Most High gave you and discern. Discern. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Galatians chapter 1, verse 6. I marvel that ye are so soon removed from him that called you into the grace of Christ unto another gospel. Now, maybe we haven't gone that far, but this contributes. Going in circles. What does that mean? Well, we're going to talk about King James a little bit. And, I'm not downing King James. He did a great thing. His heart was probably in the right place, but he was also constrained by the times. And so what comes next? Let's read on. So Wycliffe's word kirka, or as we spell it today, church, has some interesting twists to its meaning. According to modern dictionaries, such as the American Heritage Dictionary of English Language, the word church is derived from the Greek word kuriakon, meaning house of the Lord. This in itself is a poor derivative since it refers to a place, a house, rather than to people. Remember, ecclesia talked about people, an assembly of people, right? A congregation of people. But this word church, they're saying it comes from the Greek word kuriakon, which refers to a house or a building rather than to people. As Jesus intended, many older sources on etymology doubt this Greek connection. You see, everything in the Western world, the Greeks could do no wrong. Everything goes back to Greece. No, Greek culture is not that old. In fact, their entire alphabet is based on the Phoenician. What Phoenician really is Paleolithic Hebrew. So long before there was ever an alphabet, there was an aleph-bet. Okay? So if you really want to get into equity, you need to get into that Phoenician or Paleolithic Hebrew connection. Fortunately, we're talking about the Hebrews now, right? So let's learn something here. In Smith's Bible Dictionary from 1884, page 452, we read, the derivation of the word church is uncertain. I don't know that that's true, but he's going to expound some more. So it's uncertain, right? Let's continue. It is found in the Teutonic and Slavonic languages and answers to the derivatives of ecclesia. You see, they're forcing that together, but church means building, house. Ecclesia means assembly, different. So that's not where it comes from. They try to force that in there to make their, I did a video about, I talked about laws, and I'm talking about like physical laws, like the law of entropy, the law of thermodynamics. Something doesn't become a law unless it holds in every case, right? Gravity, right? Everything you drop off a building, in a vacuum, will fall at 9.8 meters per second square. That's kind of a law. It always does that. There's, we're not talking wind. Take the wind out because these forces of gravity will always accelerate something at 9.8 meters per second square, right? So that's a law. It always holds in every case. But here, they're trying to force this word church to mean ecclesia, which it doesn't, which messes up their narrative. And it might not seem important right now, but it is. It actually is. So just hear me out. Just continue. We'll get to the promised land together. I promise you. They say it's Teutonic and Slavonic languages and answers to the derivatives of ecclesia, which it doesn't, which are naturally found in the Romance languages and by foreign importation elsewhere. So the Romance languages being derivative of the Latin, base language. And so they're trying to force a meaning in here, or a lineage, etymology to this word, right? Continue. The word is, let's see, the word is generally said to be derived from the Greek kyriakos. Okay, that's a totally different thing, meaning the Lord's house. But the derivation has been too hastily assumed. It is probably associated with the Scottish kirk. And I happen to know a little something about this. That's kind of why I thought of this topic. And we'll get to it. But basically, the word kirk, it's Scottish. The Latin circus and circulus, the Greek klukos, because the congregations were gathered in circles. So the word kirk is the root word for circle. And how it becomes attributed to churches is because the pagans, Stonehenge people up there, whenever they had an assembly, they would assemble in circles. Okay. So the word circus, they always say the 3-ring circus, right? Because a circus is traditionally held within rings. So you have 3 rings. There's something going on in ring number 1. There's something going on in ring number 2. There's something going on in ring number 3. So they'll call it a 3-ring circus. But the word circus comes from the Scottish word kirk. The word circle comes from the Scottish word kirk. The word church comes from the Scottish word kirk. In fact, kirk is how you say church if you were Scottish. Okay, so we're getting there. Just stay with me here. Regarding the word church, Ebenezer Cobham, Brewer's Dictionary of Phrase and Fable of 1898 reads, the etymology of the word is generally assumed to be from the Greek, kuriao, kuriao oikos, house of God. But this is most improbable, as the word existed in all the Celtic dialects long before the introduction of Greek. No doubt the word means a circle. The places of worship among the German and Celtic nations were always circular. So Welsh, cirque, French, circa, Scotch, kirk, Greek, kirkos. Compare Anglo-Saxon circa, a church, with circle, a circle. Okay, so we've established that. So it means circle. It's the root word of circle. So they tie a structure to assembly, meaning that's how they did it in the pagan subcultures of Germanic and English, Scottish cultures. So circle became affiliated with, for instance, a religious setting or just an oratory, like a town hall. They was always in a circle. If church is derived from the word circle, how then did the original Greek word ecclesia become church or circle? See, so that word does not replace ecclesia. It actually, if you really look at it, without the cultural background, circle has nothing to do with assembly. Now, if you understand the Teutonic backdrop, then okay, I see where you get that word from, and you replace the word ecclesia, which means assembly, with the word kirka, circle, generally a circular structure or a place where people come together in a circle. So that's kind of how that part came about. But let's continue. Throughout England, pagan religious gatherings were always held at a stone circle. The Druids, with their Stonehenge, the Celts and Saxons also met at stone circles to worship their gods, pagan gods. Many of these stone circles still exist throughout England. And so, these things, they're archaeological gold mines, but the bottom line is these circles were used to worship pagan gods. Many of these stone circles still exist throughout England, and about 28 are found in Wycliffe's Yorkshire area, where, Wycliffe was, translating the Bible. He was probably sitting on a circle, not realizing it, right? But that's their culture. And so they said, you know what, instead of assembly, we'll just say circle, church, circle, right? Or kind of a circus. I find it ironic that that word is, they all have the same root word. Church and circus have the same root word, right? Many of the first English Christian buildings for worship were located on these circle sites or were built using stones from these circles. Through this association, the people of Wycliffe's day continue to call these buildings a kirk, Scottish, right? A circle, Old English, or kirka, Wycliffe's version, really pronounced kirka. Each variation meaning circle and describing a place, a cult, and not the people. Okay? So, we're going to get there. It's getting a little deeper. Although we can see Wycliffe's rationale for using the word church or circle as common English in his day, it was not suitable then or now, since it does not meet the meaning or intent of the original word, a reference to people, because church or circle describes a place. The real meaning of ecclesia is completely lost, right? And we're not to mention the Hebrew, because remember, if we lost the Greek, we definitely lost the Hebrew meaning, intent. So that's why it's so important to understand Hebrew, because let's face it, it was originally written in Hebrew, then translated into Greek, and then Latin, blah, blah, blah. And then they made the attempt to put it into English. But was this necessarily kind of accidental? Was there purpose behind referencing circle? More than just, hey, that's a word we use. Is there something deeper here? The better translation congregation was used by most other translations after Wycliffe, except the Geneva Bible and the one authorized by King James, the latter being the foundation of our modern versions. Well, everybody loves the King James Bible. It's very poetic. It's almost Shakespearean. It's like you're reading a Shakespeare play or something. It's maybe because it's English, it's it's like the best English. It's hard to explain. It's just a really poetic expression. Even when you quote the Bible, or when I do, I tend to regurgitate the King James jargon. It just sounds poetic, thou shalt instead of you will, we all understand that. It's just a nice flowing translation / transliteration. So anyway, let's continue. Galatians 1, chapter 1, verse 7, which is not another, but there be some that trouble you and would pervert the gospel of Christ. Yes, they've always been around. You just have to have a discerning spirit. The King James Bible conspiracy. Okay, this is basically what's being said. Now I know there's a lot of people who love King James. I get it, but like any politician, just like today, there are always little side stories to this. So there's a reason that the word church was used instead of congregation. And remember, the difference between this version and other versions is this is the king authorizing it. The king, the king of both the northern and southern kingdoms of Scotland and England, right? He had united the two. So now he's got a lot of people as subjects. And he says, we're going to say this word. And I'm just picking on this word. He had input on a lot of stuff, but remember, he's not the one that translated it. But he, of course, being the one that's authorizing it and being the king, he gave guidance. And so let's continue. The story gets interesting when King James I of England, he was like King James VI of Scotland, though. So sometimes they call him King James 6 and 1. So anyway, but he was King James I of England, same guy, right? Decided to authorize his own translation of the Bible in 1611. The other versions fell to the king's disfavor because their footnotes failed to honor the king. To correct this, he gathered 54 scholars and gave them 15 edicts to follow. As they translated and published his authorized version. This is a greater concern. Okay, so we're going to add and subtract a little bit. We're gonna make sure, for instance, the Hebrew word is for James is Jacob, but he insisted that you're going to use my name. So James replaces Jacob. That might seem small, but you get the drift here. He's changing a few things, and we're going to get back to church because there's a reason he changes congregation to church. His first edict was that they use the Bishop's Bible of 1568 with as few changes as possible. Okay, so he's giving them a foundation to work with. For whatever reason, he says, you got to use this Bishop's Bible, right? However, the third edict specified that in select places where the Bishop Bible translated ecclesia as congregation, they were to use church. That doesn't sound like some random thing. That sounds like a very purposeful thing. It's an edict, he says. Get that out. It doesn't matter that the word congregation is the most accurate word. I insist that we use the word church, circa, circle, circus, right? There's a reason. He forced that in there. So don't think this is some small thing. There's a reason. These men know what they're doing, right? They're men of power and want to retain their power. So what possible reason could King James have for insisting on this? His fourth edict stated that they could use the Tyndale, Matthew, Coverdale, the Great Bible, also called the Whitchurch, Kramer, and Cromwell Bible. I wonder if that refers to, no, I think Oliver Cromwell came later. And the Geneva versions of the Bible wherever they were closer to their accessible manuscripts. The king's influence is also seen when the name of the apostle and brother of Jesus was translated as James rather than Jacob. Greek is Jacobus, right? Because there's no letter J in either Hebrew or Greek, at least back then, right? In fact, in the King James 1611 initial version, the letter J doesn't exist anywhere because the letter J literally had just been invented and it didn't make it into the 1611 version. So, of course, if the letter J wasn't invented, then the Messiah's name couldn't have been Jesus because there was no letter J. So what do they call him? For 1,000 years. You got to understand the name Jesus is only about 400 years old. because they didn't have a letter J. So what did they call him for all that time? You know, for what is it, 1600 years? What do they call him? If there's no letter J, they call him Isus. Isus, and that's another video. We could talk about that all day. But all these traditions that you hold to, like how holy is a name if it's only 400 years old? The letter J was invented for a reason. If you look at what King James is doing here, and I'm not saying he did this, but just look at it. A lot of thought went into what do we want in this book. So why was the letter J even invented? It's almost as if they were trying to get away from, I'm not saying this is why the letter J was invented, but it was that important. This translation was that important. The Bible, the thing that was going to guide all culture. Why would they create a letter J? Anyway, that's just food for thought. What you do by doing that is the name Isus sounds suspicious, right? If we really think about it. But if you put a J in the front, then it becomes Jesus, right? That doesn't sound so suspicious. And then you could say, yeah, see, it's our way of saying Joshua. Well, no, because in the Old Testament, you actually said Joshua. Why don't you just keep saying the word Joshua? His actual name would be Yahusha, because there's no letter J, it would be Yahusha. But why would you split the New and the Old Testament up? It's the same name. So in the Old Testament, you say Joshua. In the New Testament, you say Jesus. You think that's an accident? I don't think so. None of this stuff is an accident. There's a lot of purpose, a lot of purpose by men with a lot of power. And we look back at it like, he was the king of a bunch of farmers or whatever. No, this was one of the most powerful men on the planet at that point in time. So, and he's making decisions to ensure that. I'm sure of that. Why was the king so adamant about using the word church? That he knew to mean circle rather than using the correct translation. What do we know about this king? Okay, so for all you King James fans, it might get a little uncomfortable, but let's look at King James a little bit, right? On April 15th, 1601, King James entered the secret society of the Freemasons. Nothing ever ends well when you throw that term in there, because now it's like the automatic conspiracy theorist, Pavlov's dog. You ring the bell as soon as you say Freemasons, every conspiracy guy comes out. But was this conspiracy? Nope. He joined the Freemasons, and we all kind of know what that means. Credit him as being the originator of the worldwide system of lodges within present-day Freemasonry. This is of great concern. Okay? Come on. He joined the Freemasons. And then he established the worldwide system of lodges. So, there's something up. The question is, what is up? His version of the Bible became and still is the favorite version of Freemasons, right? One of the most important symbols in Freemasonry is a circle with a dot in the center, part of their motif, the shape that is drawn by the compass. So this was a Freemasonry move. We had to say circle instead of congregation. And for some reason in Freemasonry, this was a very important point. And I'm not a Freemason, but I can only imagine, you know what I'm saying? It must have been very important for the king to make this one of his edicts that, I'm good with it, except that this word congregation, that means congregation. I don't want it to mean congregation anymore. I want it to mean circle. because I'm a Freemason and, we have a special thing. Anyway, Acts chapter 7 and verse 37. This is that Moses which said unto the children of Israel, a prophet shall the Lord your God raise up to you of your brethren like unto me. Him shall ye hear. This is he that was in the church in the wilderness. Wow. The church. So Israel was the church in the wilderness, or the congregation, or the assembly. The Kodashim, the set apart ones. You'll pick it up. We'll keep going with this theme. But for now, I'll say farewell. And I love you all so much. Thank you so much for continually supporting my content. If you did enjoy this video, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. And share this. Please share this with your friends and family. I'm sure they would find it interesting as well. I'm very proud and excited to continue this journey with you. And I thank you all. I very much appreciate you all, and shout out to the channel members. May everybody have a beautiful and blessed day who's in the body of Messiah, Yahusha HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ of Nazareth, and I'll see you in the next video. Shalom.